Why are you listening?
Why are you different?
Why are you here?
Why are you connected?
Why are you inspired?
Why are you tuned in?
Why are you on CJRU?
Hello?
You were just listening to Adria Kane, Sunrise. Hi, this is Annika calling from CJRU. Is this Amanda?
Yes, it is.
Hi, Amanda. Okay, so are you all ready for your interview?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I just wanted to start off by saying thank you so much for letting me interview you. Okay, we'll just get right into it. So,
Okay.
Can you please introduce yourself? What do you do, if you have a job title, to the audience?
Sure. My name is Amanda Parris, and I'm the host of Exhibitionist on CBC Television and Marvin's Room on CBC Radio 1 and 2. And I also write a weekly column for CBC Arts, and that's my day job. And then by night, I sometimes write plays.
Wow. That sounds amazing. How do you apply what you learned at post-secondary to your activism?
I guess start by saying I don't necessarily define myself as an activist.
Okay.
I think that I try to think critically about the world, and a lot of that critical thinking, or the tools to do that type of critical thinking, came from my post-secondary education. So I would definitely give a lot of credit to my minor, which was in women and gender study, for helping me to question everything and to never take anything at face value. A lot of my electives were in the Department of Caribbean and Latin American Studies, and those helped me to really have a strong sense of self and the context for what my history is and where a lot of my cultural references come from, and to understand the work that has already been done by folks who look like me in the world that I live in and in parts of the world that my family is from. So all of that has really helped to shape the way that I define my purpose and the work that I want to do. It took me a long time to learn that history and to learn those tools of critical thinking. And so for a long time, my desire was to translate a lot of that learning into accessible tools for younger kids so that they wouldn't have to wait till they got to post-secondary school to know those things. And I think in my position now, especially with the writing that I get the chance to do, I try to also make a lot of those narratives and stories and things accessible for folks who may not get to post-secondary or are not getting those same things from post-secondary education. So I don't necessarily define it as activism because I'm privileged to know a lot of real activists, and I don't necessarily think that I would position my work in that same way. It's very risky, and there's a lot of high stakes to be an activist, but I do think that I try to be critical in my art and in my work, and a lot of that criticality came from post-secondary.
Wow, thank you very much. So what is the Ride or Die project?
The Ride or Die project is something that I co-created with my friend Keisha Monique Simpson. It is a project that initially began as this idea that we would tell stories about women who support loved ones who are incarcerated and what that experience is like for them through two platforms. One would be a theater play and the other would be a documentary film. As we began working together, Keisha Monique got really busy and had to end up leaving the project, and so I continued it. And I've been writing the play Other Side of the Game ever since. And I, for a while, started also a blog to create space for women to share their stories in a public platform that would go beyond the limitations of the play. And for a really super short period of time, we also even had a little bit of a clothing line of T-shirts and sweaters. But the most important part about the project was to shed light on the fact that incarceration affects many people beyond the people that are sitting behind bars. There are many people that are doing time when somebody is incarcerated, and the impact that it has on communities is deep and it is profound, and it hasn't had space to truly be examined and considered. The inspiration for it, for me at least, came from going to visit a friend who was incarcerated, sitting in the waiting room of the Don jail where he was at the time awaiting his trial. I was sitting there and looking around and realized that nearly everybody around me was a woman, and I wondered about who they were there to see and what they had to do in their day in order to get there, because the visiting hours were really inconvenient. So I wondered if they had to take off work and things of that nature. And I just became really curious about the stories of these women and what kind of baggage they were carrying with them, what kind of narratives they had behind them. And it led me to start talking to women about their experiences supporting people that they cared about who were incarcerated. And I've been fascinated by this ever since. And I'm really excited that the play, Other Side of the Game, is going to be finally, after many years, produced this fall by Cahoots Theatre Company and Obsidian Theatre Company. So I'm really excited about that.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So, because I don't have that much time with you, I wanted to talk about some of your other projects, including your weekly radio music show, Marvin's Room. So, what music do you highlight in this show?
Well, it's an R&B music show, so it's all R&B, and we try to create a bridge between the old school and the new school, the Canadian and the international. In terms of how I define R&B, I'm pretty loose with that definition. There's definitely what you call like a classic R&B in there. There's lots of soul music. There's also lots of neo soul and trap soul and trip hop and electro R&B and electro soul and all the other different subgenres that can fit underneath that really large umbrella term. But I try to make each episode sort of a journey into the world of R&B.
Give me today my daily bread. Help me to walk alone ahead. Though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no love. Oh, my smile, my mind reassure me I don't need no one. Woke up this morning with my mind set on loving me. With my mind set on loving me. Woke up this morning with my mind set on loving me. With my mind set on loving me. I'm not lonely, I'm alone, and I'm holy by my own. I'm not lonely, I'm alone, and I'm holy by my own. Yea, the bad days may come, the lover may leave, the winter may not. Hey, the map of your palms, the tempo you be, you're all that you got.
You were just listening to Jamila Wood's Holy. Tell us more about the hip-hop education resource guide, Rhymes to Re-Education.
So that was a resource guide that was created through the Toronto District School Board in partnership with the Ontario Ministry of Education that I was privileged to be invited to be a part of. So it was the first resource of its kind in the province of Ontario that provided various lesson plans from junior kindergarten to grade 12 for teachers to be able to utilize within their classrooms. And it came with various ways that you could evaluate the work that was being produced by the students in correlation with sort of ministry guidelines. So it was a project that brought together teachers, faculty, community members, hip-hop artists, and just people who have been working in and for hip-hop for a while. It was a really incredible project. Ramon San Vincente was one of the leaders of it, Chelsea Takalo as well too, and they did an incredible job pulling it all together and making it happen. I was able to utilize lesson plans that were kind of remixes of stuff that I was developing in my career through working with our students, and I utilized that experience to help build the lesson plans that I did. And after the resource was published, I spent a lot of time traveling to different schools and communities, helping educators figure out how they can integrate the resource guide into their classrooms.
So is this resource guide that can be found throughout the Toronto District School Board, or was it only for particular schools?
I believe that it's a guide that's available for any teachers. It's not mandatory for everybody to use, but it's available for them to use as a resource. And it's also available for the public. Like, you can buy it from bookstores like a different book list, online, or going physically to the bookstore in Toronto. But yeah, it's definitely something that we created with the hope that it would be something that teachers would use, but they don't have to use it.
And what was the inspiration for the title?
Rhymes to Re-Education. That's a good question that I don't think I know the answer to. I didn't come up with the title. I was in the meetings where I think we all agreed on the title, but I don't remember how we got to it.
Okay, thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about your efforts in preserving the art of Black artists in Toronto?
Yeah, so that's sort of something that was an interest that was sparked for me after a conversation with a man named Roger McTear, who is one of the first Black Canadian filmmakers to create work in this country. And I was having a conversation with him many years ago, and he was inquiring about the work that I do. And then he was like, do you know about the Black Education Project, or do you know about Black Film and Video Network? And I was like, what are these things that you're talking about? And he's like, these are all groups and organizations and networks and collectives of artists and activists that were doing the kind of work that you are currently doing decades ago. And you should know about them if you're interested in any of this. And I felt kind of ashamed that I was hearing about this stuff for the first time, because I think I'd been under the misconception that, myself and my peers who were doing the work that we were doing were the first ones to ever try to do this. So to realize that, no, actually the wheel was created a long time ago, and you're just recreating the wheel with no knowledge of the prior wheel. And in some cases, that prior wheel was actually way better than what we were doing, kind of shamed me a little bit. So it started the very desire to just gather more knowledge about these groups and organizations and the works of different Black artists, but also to share it with folks who I think should be interested and would be interested in knowing what has come before. Because if you don't know what's come before, it's really hard to create transformative visions for the future, and we don't know what came before. We end up recreating things that already were in existence, or creating them not realizing we're going to fall into the same traps that those things did. In the past, I've translated that work by writing academic articles for different journals, and right now in my position at the CBC, writing a weekly column, I try every now and again to create columns that are addressing some of these topics and are able to document some of this history. So I did an article about Kambaya, the Canadian Black Artists in Action Network, which was an incredible collective of artists that did really amazing work and organized a festival called the Salafi Festival, celebrating African Identity Festival is what that stood for. And I've done various other things. When I do keynotes, if it fits within the theme, I try to throw a little bit of that in there and keep repeating the names that I wish were household names at this point, because the amount of work that these people have done is tremendous and everyone should know their names. Filmmakers like Sylvia Hamilton and Claire Prato and Jennifer Hodge de Silva are folks that I wish were known by many more people. So with the privileges that I have and the small platforms I have access to, I try to share a little bit of that.
Let me know, do I still got time to grow? Things ain't always set in stone. That be known, let me know. Seems like street lights glowing happen to be just like moments passing in front of me. So I hopped in the cab and I paid my fare. See, I know my destination, I'm just not there. All these street lights glowing happen to be just like moments passing in front of me. So I hopped in the cab and I paid my fare. See, I know my destination, I'm just not there in these streets. In these streets, I'm just not there. In these streets, I'm just not there. Life just ain't fair. Seems like street lights glowing happen happen to be just like moments passing in front of me. So I hopped in the cabin, I paid my fare. See, I know my destination, I'm just not there. All these streetlights glowing happen to be just like moments passing in front of me. So I hopped in the cabin, I paid my fare. See, I know my destination, I'm just not there in these streets. In these streets, I'm just not there in these streets. I'm just not there. Life just ain't fair.
You were just listening to Daniel Cesar's Streetcar. Everything that you've described in all your various projects sound like tremendous goals to achieve, and I'm really glad that somebody is taking initiative in these different areas. But out of your many projects, which one do you feel most passionate about and why?
Well, it's a hard question. I'm really lucky right now to be in a place in my life where I get to work on lots of things that I'm passionate about and that I'm excited about. I guess I'll answer it in a bit of a different way. The one that makes me the most nervous, which maybe is a sign of passion, is my theater play, Other Side of the Game. And I guess it makes me the most nervous because it's the moment where I'm actually creating as opposed to sharing information or sharing creative work. I'm actually creating the creative work, and that is very scary. And I hope that people understand what it is that I'm trying to do and get it and connect to it and feel it and maybe are moved by it or shifted by it in some way, shape, or form. But I know it's the one project that I'm doing right now that every time I talk about it, I start sweating in my armpits. So maybe that means I'm passionate about it. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit, I'm not sure how much you can reveal at this point, about your play?
Sure. So the name of the play is inspired by the Erykah Badu song of the same title, Other Side of the Game. And the play takes place in the waiting room of the Don jail in two different time periods. And two different women are waiting to visit someone that they care about in different ways. And the play goes into flashbacks of how they got to this place and what brought them to this waiting room. So yeah, I guess that's the basic premise. It all takes place in Toronto. And part of it, one of the time periods is in the 70s, so it's also sort of a documentation of that period in Toronto and what was going on then, which actually is very similar to a lot of the political and mobilized energy that's happening right now.
Okay, thank you. So what inspired you to make practical changes in our world as opposed to learning about injustices but not doing anything to change them?
I would actually say traveling was the thing that stopped me from being okay with just reading about what was happening as opposed to doing something. So in 2005, I traveled to Venezuela to attend an international conference that was happening there. And while there, I met a ton of activists of all stripes doing lots of really interesting work, everything from student union organizing to indigenous land right to organizing against the prison industrial complex. Like, think of every issue under the sun, and there were activists there that were doing work around it, young activists there that were doing work around it. And it was kind of mind-blowing talking to all of these folks and finding out about what it was that they do. And they would all turn to me and be like, so what are you working on? And I would just be like, my undergraduate degree. And I felt very ashamed that that was my answer. And they were all interested in what was happening where I lived. Like, tell me about Toronto. What's going on over there? What are the big issues? And I really couldn't answer them because I was studying international politics in my undergraduate degree for political science. And they didn't need me to tell them what was going on in like the world, because these were all the representatives from all the places that I was reading about where I'd never even been to. They wanted to know what I had a day-to-day experience with in the place that I lived in, and I had never critically thought about the issues that were happening in my own backyard. All I knew was what I saw in the news every day, and I didn't really think about it in a critical way or in a way where I recognized that I had the power to do anything about it. So it kind of checked me, and when I came back home, I was like, I got to do something. And it took me many years to figure out what that something was, and that something has transformed many times as well, too. I attended a lot of meetings about a lot of random issues for a long time before I kind of realized that, you know, where my place was and what my voice was. And I think it's an ongoing journey as well, too, because your voice can change and your place will change and your passions will change as well, too.
That might make me rethink my political science degree.
No. I mean, political science can be very relevant to, you know, where you are. It just happened to be that I was super interested in global politics and not Canadian politics. And the way that my degree was shaped was very high-level thinking, not thinking about things on the ground, which is not exactly how political science has to be. I have to say, to be quite frank, I don't remember much from that degree, even though it was my major.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
See, she's telepathic, call it black girl magic. Yeah, she scares the government, deja vu a Tubman. We go missing by the hundreds. The camera loves us, Oscar doesn't. They want us in the kitchen, kill our sons with lynchings. We get loud about it. Look at what they did to my sister. Last century, last week. They put her body in a jar and forget her. They love how we repeat. Look at what they did to my sister. Last century, last week. They make her hate her own skin, treat her like a sin. But what they don't understand, but what they don't understand is, but what they don't understand, see what they don't understand. See, she's telepathic, call it black girl magic. Yeah, she scares the government, deja vu a Tubman. And she don't give up. Yeah, she don't give up. She don't give up. No, she don't give up. Rosa was a freedom fighter and she taught us how to fight. Ella was a freedom fighter and she taught us how to fight. Audrey was a freedom fighter and she taught us how to fight. Angela was a freedom fighter and she taught us how to fight. Sojourner was a freedom fighter and she taught us how to fight. Asata was a freedom fighter and she taught us how to fight. Rosa was a freedom fighter and she taught us how to fight. Ella was a freedom fighter and she taught us how to fight. See, she's telepathic, call it black girl magic. Yeah, she scares the government, deja vu a Tubman. But what they don't understand, but what they don't understand is, but what they don't understand, see what they don't understand. She don't give up. Yeah, she don't give up. She don't give up. No, she don't give up.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains. We have nothing to lose but our chains.
You were just listening to Jamila Wood's Black Girl Soldier. Just the final question here as we wrap up. What allows you to continue pushing for change with all the obstacles that one faces when trying to make changes?
So I think it can get really overwhelming when you're like, I'm going to change the world, because that's a massive undertaking. But when I make my goals maybe a little bit more specific and focused, and I say, I just really want to let people know about this thing that existed one time, or I would really like to kind of blow the minds of this one classroom for 1 hour with the way that I'm going to share this story about something that is connected to their lives. Like, just making really specific goals helps me to not feel like what I'm trying to do is insurmountable or impossible. And then just recognizing that I am part of a much longer and larger history of folks that have been surviving and resisting and creating all at the same time, and doing that against all odds. So when I think about, the struggles of my ancestors, it doesn't seem like what I'm trying to do is that difficult in that context. I'm very lucky that I'm living in the moment that I'm living in with all the resources and privileges that I have. So those two things. And then finally, just trying to constantly push myself to envision what I'm trying to build towards. Because one thing about school that was really difficult for me, and I realized later that I needed to step away from school because of it, was that you spend a lot of time breaking things down. And that's great, and it's necessary, and it's really important to critically deconstruct things. But I also really needed to find space to build and to create, and to say, okay, after everything's broken down, what am I trying to make? And so being able to find moments and spaces where I'm able to do that is very, very, very helpful, and it's energizing and keeps me going.
Wow, that's a very beautiful, powerful statement. Amanda, thank you so much for your time.
No problem.
I learned a lot.
Thanks for asking me.
Okay, of course.
Care.
Okay, take care.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Bye.
To read more about Amanda Parris, check out her website at www.amandaparris.com.
You're listening to YRU on CGRU.
The views and opinions expressed in this program do not necessarily reflect those of the Ontario Advocate's Office for Children and Youth,